Our speaker today is Chris Yorke, and it is my pleasure to tell you a little bit about him. After graduating from Topeka Collegiate in 1998, Chris Yorke attended Topeka High School, where he played on the tennis and soccer teams, and enjoyed studying math, physics, and the visual arts. After high school, he moved to Massachusetts to attend Williams College, where he continued his study of math and physics, and ultimately majored in studio art with a primary focus on sculpture and drawing. Following graduation from Williams, he moved to Seattle to build tree houses with Pete Nelson, now the star of Treehouse Masters on Animal Planet. After working with Pete as a carpenter for a while, Pete asked Chris to be a photographer for his book, New Tree Houses of the World, and sent him on assignment all over the globe to find and photograph tree houses. And if you really are interested in that, we have the book out on the table right in front of the assembly hall. It's pretty fascinating. After his photography tour, Chris went to Princeton for his Master of Architecture degree. When he completed his architectural studies, he moved to Portland, Oregon, to take a job at an architecture office. During the time he was working in Portland, he also designed and helped build a treehouse at the Kansas Children's Discovery Center right here in Topeka. After 2 years in Portland, he married his college sweetheart, who at this point I would like to just take a moment to introduce his wife, Susie, as well as his parents, Dr. Chris Yorke and Mary Powell. Would you all just stand so we can acknowledge them? I'm so glad that you could all be here. After they married, they moved to Palau for a year. While they were there, he ran his own design practice on this tiny Micronesian island. I had to look it up to see where it was. It's in the Western Pacific, and it's beautiful. He also, while there, played professional basketball. He says it's because he was the tallest person on the island. At the end of the year, they returned to the States, and Chris took a job at Nike, helping to design 2 big flagship retail stores in South Beach, Miami, and New York City. Last year, he left Nike to take a job with the Google Research and Development Group, working on the design of their campus development projects and living in the San Francisco Bay Area. It is obvious that Chris has had many unusual but very interesting experiences, and we are thrilled to welcome him today as he shares his wisdom and life lessons with our graduating class. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoyt, for the very kind introduction, and thank you to Dr. Rance, all of the teachers, staff, board members, for inviting me here to join in this celebration. It is truly an honor. Today we are marking an important milestone for the students, but it's also a big day for the supportive parents, siblings, and friends who have been an essential part of their journey. Students, we'll recognize your achievements for the rest of the day, but for now, please join me in a round of applause for your family and friends who have made this day possible. Now, I understand there will be refreshments after this, so I'll try to keep this brief. So students, congratulations. This is it. You made it. Well done. So what now? I was sitting in your place 20 years ago, and I must admit I have no idea who came to speak or what they said. In fact, I found rather comforting in the days leading up to today. But what I do remember is the feeling of palpable excitement the celebratory end to one chapter and the kind of scary but exciting beginning of a new one. At this point, I trust that TCS has taught you how to work hard and be a good person, so I'll skip over some of these basic things. But a milestone like this offers us a chance to celebrate and a chance to reflect. With that in mind, I suggest that you use this graduation and future occasions like it as an opportunity to take stock of things, learn from your recent experience, and then decide what's next. So to help with this, I offer you 4 recommendations. First, think carefully about how you choose to spend your time. It is a choice that eventually determines who you are. As I'm sure many people have been telling you, this is a very formative time in your lives. You're creating your own identities separate from those of your parents. And how do you form an identity? Well, some stuff is set, but most of it is up to you. There are a few things you don't get to choose, which will remain the same throughout your life. Where you're from, who your parents are, what your shoe size is, although for some of you that could still change a bit. Or for so many other things, more important things, you do get to decide and choose for yourself. How much time do you spend working and studying? How much time do you spend hanging out with friends? How much time do you spend thinking about yourself versus other people? How much time do you spend texting, eating, shopping, reading, watching TV, dancing, traveling, laughing? These are not abstract ideas. These are decisions you make each and every day, whether passively or actively. And I can't tell you the best way to spend your time. Each of you will decide this for yourselves. But the important thing to remember is that it is a choice. As you're choosing how to spend your time, consider your aptitudes and your circumstances, but don't feel bound by them. You don't need to let the fixed aspects of your identity define you. For example, looking at me, you might think I'm tall and therefore good at basketball, but this isn't really true. I actually prefer playing tennis and soccer. Perhaps not the obvious choice for someone 6'6", but it's up to me to decide, and similarly, your self-definition is largely up to you. Now, high school can be a very important place to do this work of kind of parsing what is you and what is not you. So make sure to give yourself some freedom to not have all the answers right away. Give yourself some space to think about many alternatives before you make a choice. Sometimes it's okay to have more uncertainty than certainty. Sometimes you need to try on many different hats in order to find the one that fits the best. And sometimes it's okay to make your own custom hat, even if several of the ones you've already tried on fit pretty well. As you consider how you want to spend your time and which hats you want to try on, remember that everything we do is a decision to support something. A person, even yourself, a school, a company, a country, an idea, and so on. Our actions form a story about who we are and what we believe. So what story do you want to tell about yourself? You should begin today, and remember that you're not alone in this story, and this is perhaps the best part. Not only do you get to choose how you spend your time, you also get to choose who you spend it with, which brings me to my second recommendation. Make an effort to interact with different types of people. They can help you figure out what you really care about. Now, the people you've met here at TCS are a great start, and I'm sure that many of your fellow classmates will be lifelong friends. When you get to high school, there will likely be a tendency for everyone to form small groups based on similarity and familiarity. Over here are the jocks, and down that way are the nerds, and upstairs you can find the theater kids, and the musicians, etc. These groups form naturally to help us feel like we belong, and we all have an inherent reflex to find others who are similar to ourselves. If you can, I suggest that you fight this reflex, and try to make friends with people in several different groups. There is no rule that says you can only be interested in math or foreign languages, community service, or choreography. You can be anyone you want to be. And hanging out with people who look or talk differently than you is a great way to develop a well-rounded perspective. It's also a great way to discover new things and possibly find something you really believe in. So having a variety of interesting and thoughtful people in your life is so important. They will challenge you, inspire you, and encourage you to consider alternative viewpoints that you couldn't come up with on your own. We all depend on each other to make sense of things, and so much of our experience becomes meaningful only when it is shared. It's also important to recognize that this process is bidirectional, and you should be aware of how your words and actions affect other people. This might seem obvious, but if you have a cynical or negative outlook, you'll attract others with that same disposition. If you're kind and compassionate, always looking to be available and helpful to others, you'll attract the same type of generous people into your life. However, even if you have the best people around you with only the best intentions, things can still go wrong sometimes. And this brings me to my third recommendation. Remember that you can't always control what happens in life, but you can control your reactions. Consider the parable of the farmer who lived with his son and his horse. One day the horse ran away from the farm, and all the neighbors said, "Oh, what bad news! We're so sorry to hear about your bad fortune." And the farmer replied, "Good news, bad news, who knows?" The next day, the horse returned to the farm, followed by a herd of wild horses, and all the neighbors said, "Wow, what great luck to have so many new horses." And the farmer said, "Good news, bad news, who knows?" The day after that, the farmer's son tried to tame one of the wild horses, and he was thrown off, breaking his leg. And the neighbors said, "Oh, we're so sorry to hear the bad news of your son's broken leg." And the farmer said, "Good news, bad news, who knows?" A week later, the king sent around his henchmen to collect all able-bodied men to go fight in a war. And the neighbors all said, "The farmer's son was spared because of his broken leg." And the neighbors all said, "Wow, what great luck that your son didn't have to go into battle." And the farmer said, "Good news, bad news, who knows?" I could go on, but I think you probably get it. The farmer, although wise, is kind of a one-line guy. Anyway, the point is that many things in life are out of our control. But more than that, we don't know how events will eventually play out. In your life, and especially in your high school experience, all sorts of apparently good or bad things are going to happen to you. Sometimes you'll be on top of the world and ace the exam or shoot the game-winning shot. And other times you'll be discouraged, sad, frustrated, not knowing why you didn't get the lead part in the play or a date to the dance. Sometimes you'll get sent to the principal's office for causing trouble, but then end up giving the graduation speech 20 years later. Try not to get too wrapped up in these things. Life is unpredictable, and we're all improvising all the time. Often things that seem bad when they first happen might not be so terrible after all. A quick example from my life on this one. When I finished college, I wanted to go to one of the best architecture schools. I applied and was rejected from all of my top choices, and it hit me really hard. I thought it was the worst thing imaginable. But looking back on it now, I think it was one of the best things that could have ever happened to me. After getting rejected from graduate school, I was offered this amazing opportunity that Mrs. Hoyt told you about. I got paid to travel around the world for several months photographing tree houses. I went to Brazil, Australia, Thailand, India. During my travels, I got to see and stay in some of the world's most unbelievable tree houses, and I met amazing people that I still keep in touch with today. None of that could have happened if I'd been accepted to school the first time I applied. So today I feel pretty good about having been rejected. But I wish I hadn't, at the time, I wish I hadn't reacted so strongly to it. I wish I had taken out a page out of the farmer's book and not let myself get overwhelmed or wrapped up in good or bad outcomes. Try to remember this when you meet with success and failure throughout your life. There will be a lot of ups and downs, a lot of gains and losses. And I encourage you to try to keep a broad perspective throughout. Remember, above all else, you have the ability to choose how you spend your time and ultimately what difference you want to make in the world. You have the ability to choose who you surround yourself with and what insights and viewpoints are valuable. And you have the ability to choose how you react to the wild ride of adolescence and adulthood that's headed your way right now. And this brings me to my fourth and final point. Although the next few years are going to bring a lot of changes for you, don't be in too much of a hurry to grow up. In fact, I highly recommend that you never do it. Now, I don't mean that you shouldn't become more responsible, thoughtful, take on adult tasks, make a meaningful contribution to the world, and so on. What I mean is that you should never forget about or ignore the childlike part of your nature that experiences genuine wonder, pure happiness, and the ability to dream. In your mad dash towards adulthood, don't ever lose your curiosity and your imagination. Congratulations, class of 2018. We're so proud of you and excited to see what you'll do next.